Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the GovTech Week. Thanks for tuning in for the International 5-Day Online Conference that gathers policymakers, startup founders, tech experts, and everyone else interested in tech for good and solving social challenges with technology. Last year, we created the buzz in GovTech ecosystem with the first GovTech Baltic conference in the region, GovTech Baltic Leaders. Although I wish all of us could meet again in the same place this year, the time dictates its own conditions, and this year, we're moving online. But we have to admit, this situation created opportunity for us to expand the range of speakers, participants, and also a number of days from 1 to 5. For a second year in a row, this conference is brought to you by GovTech Lab Lithuania team at the Agency for Science, Innovation and Technology. My name is Aruna, I'm the manager of GovTech Lab, and me and my colleague Ruta will be guiding you through these 5 exciting days. Over the next 5 days, we'll have over 70 speakers joining us from Europe, Australia, North America, and other parts of the world. We will explore the GovTech topic and try to answer the question, what is the role of technology in solving 21st century public sector problems and social challenges? What are its potentials and limitations? The GovTech Week will have 4 main topics and will finish off with the first ever International GovTech Day to pay tribute to increasingly growing international GovTech community. Day 1, which is today, will focus on the role of startups and tech in delivering the European Green Deal. Tomorrow, we'll talk about rethinking public sector and we'll try to answer the question, how the public service that reflects technological advancements and citizen expectations should look like. Startups and companies try to build their products for the best user experience. Can we do that with the public services? On Wednesday, we will explore the potential of data and technology in making policy decisions, while Thursday will focus on the effect of technology on democracy. If you are interested in how does activism and citizen engagement change with digital tools, this will definitely be a very interesting day for you. Finally, on Friday, international GovTech community will gather to discuss how to build GovTech teams and why startups were critical globally in fighting COVID-19. We will finish the week with showcases of very exciting solutions from startups to fight the pandemic. Throughout the week and throughout today, you will hear different keynotes and presentations and showcases of solutions. Some will be broader and will concern the big picture, and some will be about specific technical solutions for the government. Although we invite you to join for the whole week, please find what interests you the most on govtechweek.com and join at those times. Although most of the questions for the panel discussions have been already gathered from a wide range of stakeholders, please use the chat to network with other individuals joining the conference. Every day will be streamed via different YouTube link. You were supposed to have already received links to all the days in your email. In addition, every morning our participants will receive a reminder email with information on how to join a specific topic that you've registered on the Eventbrite page. However, if you're not an email person and you're interested in all 5 days of GovTech Week, join us at GovTech Week event page on Facebook and get notifications and links there. But without further ado, I'd like to present the first speaker, a great believer in GovTech and actually one of the first people in Lithuania to support setting up GovTech Lab and opening Lithuania's public sector to startups. I'd like to welcome Virginijus Sinkevičius, current European Commissioner for Environment, Oceans and Fisheries, and former Minister of Economy and Innovation in Lithuania.
Dear GovTech enthusiasts, the one who truly believe in government of the 21st century. The European Commission, from the very beginning of its mandate, proved that it will develop a policy for future Europe. The European Commission opened Pandora box with the European Green Deal. Little by little, we are presenting our new policies to save our planet for future generations. This is a big and complex task. It is not only a task for European Union institutions, for national governments. It is a task for everyone, every person, from Lisbon to Vilnius, from Athens to Helsinki. It is a task for students and politicians, commissioners and entrepreneurs, big corporations in Germany and small startups in Vilnius, Old Town. It is ambitious, but Europe is ready to turn this ambition to new reality. We are ready for major turns in the way we move around our cities, the way we choose products, the way we consume, and the way we govern ourselves. It is also about how we do business and what businesses we set up. Do we develop businesses and solutions that can contribute to the country? Do we set up businesses that helps to implement modern policies? It is time to be brave about the green transition. It is going to happen and everyone is needed on board. Now it's time. I have always trusted in innovation. I have always believed in innovative minds. The ones who come with idea and passion for this idea. The ones who believe that this idea is about to change the world. Most of you already know my faith in startups, the real game changers. I can assure you that you are needed for green transition. Let me tell you even more. I think you are a top gear for the engine for this change. You always want it all, and you want it now. Some would say that startups can reach only small victories in this field. I don't agree. First of all, green startups have already created an opportunity for textile to become a part of circular economy. Green startups have suggested more effective and less polluting ways how to move in the cities. They have already made a change. And I hope you recall that these are Lithuanian startups. Secondly, small victories also matter. Sometimes they might be widely unnoticed, but they can be very important and very inspirational. There is much space for these victories: transport, agriculture, environment, energy, and many more. All these sectors require green GovTech solutions. It's just a matter of imagination. Hence, you are on the good path towards green change and maybe new business opportunities. Thank you, and have a productive GovTech week.
This was definitely a very inspiring opening speech, but the question still remains: who has more chances of solving the climate crisis, startups or policymakers? Governments around the world are arguably not making big enough commitments to fight climate change, while startups, although having exciting and innovative products, often don't have the scale to solve such magnitude crises by themselves. Our next discussion will explore the role of startups and policymakers in solving the climate crisis. Please welcome Agne Buraitytė, Advisor for Climate, Environment and Digitalization at the Nordic Council of Ministers, Arnoldas Pranckevičius, Head of the European Commission's representation in Lithuania, Rytis Kėvalaitis, Vice Minister at the Ministry of Energy in Lithuania, Ignas Survila, CIO at Kilo Health, Simonas Stankus, CEO at Imbalance Grid. The discussion will be moderated by Vasarė Krikštopaitytė, Sustainability Expert.
And let's dive straight to the burning topic. Nowadays, everyone agrees that human activities has a major effect in increasing climate change. However, governments around the world are slow in making commitments to fight climate change and lagging in executing these engagements. So I would like to address Arnoldas. Maybe you could comment on this from European perspective. Is this caused by political factors or the structural inefficiency of public sectors? Arnoldi, could you?
Thank you so much. Thank you for this discussion. Well, I believe that climate change is a big challenge and a big opportunity for everyone, and one should not distinguish between public sector, private sector, academia, NGOs, civil society, because all of us, all of those key actors have to be involved, and all of them have to play a role, especially in implementing our key strategy, European Green Deal, which this commission, the commission of President von der Leyen, has launched in December, and the policy that is really guiding most of our work since then. And it's not just about environmental protection, it's about a completely new economic model. It is about really choosing new ways, the way we see transport, the way we see agriculture, the way we see energy, the way we invest in innovations and science and technology. And therefore, in many ways, climate change objective has to be global, has to be a concerted effort of all players involved. And therefore, I salute this also discussion to see how perhaps private and public sectors can cooperate better.
Yeah. Thank you, Arnoldas. Now I would like to ask Rytis, maybe you have something to add from Lithuanian perspective in this matter.
So thank you, Vasara, for the question. I think what is important to note, complementing what Arnoldas said, is to deliver climate neutrality, we will need future technologies, and future technologies means a lot of opportunities. And for future technologies, and speaking about our discussion between policymakers and startups, I think for the future technologies, policymakers has to create a regulatory framework which enables to startups to deliver those new technologies, which are essential to deliver the Green Deal and carbon neutrality. So speaking from the policymaker perspective, I would say there are twofold targets for policymakers to enable this green transition. One is setting ambitious targets. And I'm very glad to say that in energy, we have ambitious targets in Lithuania. We have 45% renewable target for 2030 in Lithuania, when the common European target is 32%. So it's way above EU average target of renewable energy. So one is setting the high bar for private sector to deliver. And the second, as I said, is creating a regulatory framework for startup companies to create technologies and to create a new business models to deliver this change. And I'm also glad that we are also having this regulatory sandbox, which enables new business models and technologies to be piloted and then mass scaled later. So I think it's a synergy between policymakers, startups, and even a wider social partners on which we have to focus to delivering the Green Deal.
So, question for you, Rytis, regarding what you said. Are these ambitious targets possible to reach, since climate change is a common problem on the common European perspective?
So yeah, as I said, if we are speaking about 100% renewable energy-based technology, if we are doing this on today's technology, of course it seems difficult to reach. But I think with our and I would like to draw a historical parallel with American space program back in the 60s, when we were saying that we are going to land in the moon in the next 10 years. So it seems like a very impossible target. And I think it's a similar momentum now in the Europe, when we are saying we are going to be climate neutral in 2050. So it seems impossible, but having this, as I said, very ambitious targets from the policymaker, then that's aligning the industry, the academia, the startups, and all the other social partners to deliver on this ambition. So I think it's, it depends from which perspective do you look, and I think it is clear that among the European countries there are consensus moving towards the carbon neutrality, and this of course mobilizes all partners, as I said, startups, academia, industry, financial side. So this is all mobilizes all partners to deliver on this target.
Thank you very much, Rytis. I see Agne nodding her head, and I would like you to add to this discussion. Maybe you could elaborate to what was said, and also what could be improved in the public sector to address climate change.
Definitely. I really do agree with some of the points brought up by the previous panelists, because it is indeed a very big challenge, and we need all parties involved to be a part of this. And that includes transboundary cooperation. So working at the Nordic Council of Ministers, I see so many of the examples that we could actually just take, and some of them to copy-paste. Some of the biggest suggestions and solutions that are already offered, if we selected some of them, there's been research done that even in Lithuania, we could cut up to 34% of our emissions just by scaling up. And that's the amount of almost 2 Icelands that emit. So also, I think here, our public sector has a very big role to actually facilitate this learning from each other, and this brave, as Rytis mentioned, brave big goals, and then having the relative support mechanisms that could work. Here, I think it's also very important to highlight that the financial flows need to correspond with the goals that are set out. So if we look at climate, thinking about the climate finance, how much we invest in startups that are solving this, and how much we also send mitigation signals to companies saying that this is not an area we should be investing in, and saying that fossil fuels are going to become more and more expensive, and that you need to be looking into the future rather than into the past.
Thank you very much, Agne. Now I want to go back to Arnoldas and to ask him to add a little bit more of European perspective, and to ask him how do you put European efforts together in order to accelerate the technological advancements even more? Could you maybe try to answer to this?
Thank you, Vasarya. Well, of course, for any great idea to flourish, you need also sound financing. So not only, we have come up with all the strategies which are needed to implement European Green Deal, from biodiversity strategy to circular economy strategy to from farm to fork strategy, but the Commission has also come up with very ambitious financing solutions that could help the governments and the businesses to implement those strategies. And you've seen very difficult negotiations just over a month ago at the European Council among the leaders for 4 days and 3 nights over the long-term EU budget and the recovery fund. And the good outcome of it is that even 30% of the agreed 1.8 trillion euro financial package for the European Union will be devoted to the implementation of the European Green Deal, will be devoted to the climate related policies. And this is exactly the money we think will create this added value, will be channeled to make a significant change, and will be done in different fields. For instance, in agriculture, we expect much more investment in ecological farming and in digital farming. In transport, of course, we expect much more public investments in terms of sustainable transport, electricity-driven transport, and of course, all of the interconnections between the countries like Rail Baltica in the Baltic states case is also an important part of the Green Deal. We expect much more investment from this budget into the renewable energy in different projects, wind, solar, and offshore and whatnot. And last but not least, which is super important, a much more significant amount devoted for climate in our famous European Horizon program, right? The science and research budget, which of course is a signature budget, not only in Europe, but in the world, and which will have about 75 billion euro capacity in the next 7 years. And a lot of that budget will be devoted to green and digital. And both are connected. I wouldn't separate them, because in order to achieve the green goal and in order to achieve what Rita has said, the climate neutrality by 2050 in Europe, we need a lot of investments in digital technology, in science and innovation. It goes hand by hand. And if these investments will be effective, if they will be well coordinated, if they will be scrutinized and also, transparent, I hope that this will help us achieve this goal.
Thank you very much, Arnoldas. Now I would like to ask, maybe Agne has something to add to this from Nordic Council.
Yes, definitely. Arnoldas brought out some great points because seeing the financial flows that correspond with the big goals we have is crucial. Just a few days ago, the Nordic governments have announced that they're going to be investing 250 million Danish crowns into green digital solutions. So exactly in addition to all the other initiatives that are going on, national governments are also seeing this important element of growing these solutions, of scaling them up, of finding new ones. And here it's super important to understand that only with valid financing this will happen. And this will allow some of the smaller initiatives to grow and become visible and become seen. Here, I think it's quite interesting to think about some of the solutions that are currently just startups and small, but with such support, they can become bigger. There are some small startups that are, for instance, working on cattle feed, and they're then able to, and they have a goal to just change the feed and make it more climate friendly by feeding cattle some algae. And that would actually potentially reduce the global CO2 emissions by 3%. So just imagining this is one startup, but many startups that would actually have the possibility to grow with such funding from the Nordic ministries and from the EU. It's actually fascinating to see and fascinating to think about.
Thank you, Agne. It's really amazing that Nordics are so active in this field. So now I would like to ask Kritis, how do you make sure European funds that the national government will distribute are used efficiently? Sorry.
So I think the crucial thing is to have a planning, extensive planning procedure, and I'm very glad that in Lithuania. We have a national energy independence strategy with 100 renewable electricity target in 2050, and this was approved in the parliament back in 2018. And we have a national energy and climate plan, which was approved in the cabinet of ministers last December. So, and it was extensive process of discussing with different stakeholder groups, ministries about how to achieve these climate targets until maybe in the 2030 and more or less in the 2050. And this is, I would like to say that now we are very much prepared to kick off the massive investment into the climate area, including the renewable energy efficiency, circular economy, and so on and so forth. So this, I think, we are in very favorable position right now. And another aspect, speaking about the financial resources, I think this is a unique opportunity, taking into account the COVID-19 now and economy stimulus package to actually reinvent and refocus our economies into the green growth and having, as I said, NECP, National and Energy Climate Plans, which are already in place in all European countries and in Lithuania in particular. In particular, we have a good NECP, I believe, and it was praised in Brussels among 5 NECPs, with the highest ambition in renewable energy. So I think we are in a very good position to kick off the investment, and I think in the next decade to become climate regional hub, I would say, in Lithuania, and being a small country to also get economics benefit to becoming a climate-friendly solutions export-oriented country. So this is, I think, it's a very unique opportunity, and we have to seize it as much as possible. And I would like to also add some points on technology development, and this is climate neutrality goal in 2050 is 30 years away from now. And I thought that 30 years ago, exactly 30 years ago, there were 2 important milestones, I think, in European politics. One is the Berlin Wall fell down, and another one was the first offshore wind farm in Denmark 30 years ago. So it was kind of a very similar time, but it's been a lot of developments, and in both sides, on the integration side in the last 30 years on the European level, and also on the renewable energy development in the last 30 years. So now offshore wind is almost one of the cheapest electricity production source in Europe, and this is, who knows what will be in the next 30 years. And I think we, as discussed, we have to kick off the investment into the new breakthrough technologies, and which could deliver this climate neutrality goal in 2050.
Thank you very much, Rytis. Actually, to finalize this part, I would like to ask Agne, Rytis, and Arnoldas, maybe you have something to add. So feel free to just say if you have some more thoughts about this coming funds and from governmental side, and just feel free to add something.
Well, I'll perhaps add one thing, that in this world, what we sometimes lack is ideas and creative ideas, and I think that's where exactly the startup community can be an incredible source of inspiration, creativity, and resource. As in the government structures, sometimes there is a lack of creative projects, and especially with these meaningful investments coming our way, which will be indeed to some extent of historical proportions. Also, in the case of Lithuania, I really would like to see much more cooperation between the private and public sector in the country, much more public debate about where the investments are going, and much more scrutiny as well from the civil society and from the media. Thank you.
So yeah, from my side, our discussion topic is who will solve our climate crisis, startups or policymakers. So I think there is no the answer is cooperation, and yeah, or it is only complement what Arnoldas and Agne has said, and I think it's time to hear the private part and engage more in the discussion in this.
Definitely. I want to add on and agree that cooperation, I think, is the key part here, that it's all hands on deck, this kind of situation, because it's a big, wicked problem, and we need everyone's expertise, from public sector to startups to civil society, to keep everything in check. So all hands on deck, and only then we have a chance.
Thank you all for beautiful introduction. That you actually made my work much easier. So now we are actually moving on to hands-on experience with Ignas and Simonas. And I want to start with maybe a little bit uncomfortable question. Are startups capable of understanding the bigger sustainability picture and deliver products that could really solve the climate crisis? As you can see, massive money are going to be distributed. Are private companies and startups actually capable of using it efficiently? It's actually Ignas or Simonas who would like to answer.
Yeah, I believe I can start. So since we received investment from Konvesicinis Fund, that is a public fund, and Contrarian Ventures, venture capital, and also our investment in both business angels. So I believe it's a good example of how public and private entities could cooperate in supporting startups like In Balance that are fighting climate change and working on sustainable business models. So yes, I believe that there are good initiatives here, in all layers, not only in the private, but also in the public layer, in understanding importance of sustainability and etc. And from my personal perspective, I see a big change in the past 2 years in understanding the importance of sustainability topics. For example, 5-6 years ago, when I were having meetings with possible clients and presented products made in a sustainable way that emitted less CO2 during the production process and so on, clients were not interested in it, or at the best scenario thought that these kind of messages would be useful for their marketing. And nowadays, I notice difference. Clients are concerned about the climate change and want to be a part of the changes. And I just would like to reflect what previous panelists said, that there are quite a lot of good initiatives already. For example, EU already have really ambitious plan. One of the examples is to reduce CO2 level in 2030 to reach 1990 level. There are various support initiatives to reach this goal that are related to EE growth and etc. However, for some reason, we usually see long-term goals as a question of a future. And I believe that we should not wait till 2028 or similar, and we should focus on these goals even more, on these goals in more ambitious way and etc. And a very common question, in a startup community, and is that are we capable to make a change, to make an impact in fighting a climate change here in Lithuania? So, once again, from personal perspective, I can say definitely yes. Because trust me, I took part in building one of the biggest organic companies in Europe here in Lithuania. And that was about 4 or 5 years ago. And at that moment, nobody believed in us that we could build it in a country without any tradition of organic food consumption or sustainable agriculture. But we did it. We did it here in Lithuania. And we built a business that grows food in a sustainable way, that adjusts sustainable agriculture methods, and etc. And nowadays, that company, I'm not working there anymore. Have a lot of visits from Germany, from Austria, from France farmers that want to take some lessons from good Lithuanian example. So what I'm saying that we need to believe in us, we need to believe in each other and work in all the layers and try to become an example to our European partners and etc. So that's in short.
Thank you very much, Simonas. Now I would like to ask Ignas to share his experience and maybe some concrete examples of startups solving the climate crisis.
Yeah, sure. So first of all, hello everyone. I definitely agree with Simonas regarding sustainable startups. It's very essential to understand that startups that are focusing on sustainability and sustainable energy transition or in general, they are not NGOs. First of all, they are businesses that are focusing on growing revenues and financial gain, but understanding the crucial part of sustainability, because it's just inevitable. We now more and more understand that the corporates or startups that are not focusing on sustainability from broad perspective, probably in next decade they are not going to be in the ecosystem anymore, I believe so. So it's very crucial part, and that's why a lot of VCs are appearing who are investing concretely directly into that field, and there are a lot of resources and financial gain that has been invested so far. Unfortunately, there is kind of a problem where a huge bet comes on the table, and the problem is that there are not so many huge success stories so far that could prove that sustainable energy transition startups or the startups that are focusing on that field or sustainable mobility field. Basically, we have only one example, and probably that's the biggest persona so far who is in every single newspaper today is Elon Musk and his company, and probably he put some fire in the field and inspires a lot of people to move into that direction, because what he did with Tesla and all the different startups and companies, businesses that he owns, it's definitely incredible. And who could say that 10 years ago, let's say that somebody could come with a T-shirt and overgrow such a conservative industry, let's say automotive industry. So yeah, that's the great example that it's possible, and I definitely agree with all candidates today that all the people today that it's essential to have a cooperation between both parties in order to have a successful examples, even in Lithuania or worldwide. What I highlighted from Rita's speech was ambitious goals. That was quite interesting topic to analyze a bit, and technology probably is the answer here, how to achieve those ambitious goals. Ambitious goals are very important to have, and I won't wait for that to 2030 to something finalized, but probably technological part and scientific part will be again that fire which will make all the things much more productive. And another part which was very interesting is historical perspective. And what I highlighted for myself, there was in 1974, there was a company called Witcar in Amsterdam. Actually, it was one of the first car sharing projects in the world. They did very small, tiny cars that could be like shareable between people in Amsterdam. And even though they raised $250 back then, but the company needed to go bankrupt because they didn't have the city council support. Enough support in order to build more stations and put more people into these cars to be shared. So that's a good example, probably, that governmental part is very essential as well. We cannot just startups could put their first fire into the innovation field and move much more productive, probably push the limits and etc., like we did with drones and unmanned aircrafts and etc. And legislation comes afterwards, but it can help maintain the businesses in much longer perspective. That's why it's very important to have that partnership in mind. So yeah, just a quick remark here.
Thank you very much, Ignas. Actually, you answered more than one question that we had for you. This is very amazing. So you covered all the topic for mobility. So now I would like to ask Simonas, what would be other sectors that are important for startups that could have significant impact on green energy and environmental field?
Yeah, so personally, I'm working in a field of electric vehicles. In Balance creates chargers, smart chargers for EVs. And yeah, in general, if we are talking about business that work in sustainable way and mitigate climate change, it would be companies who works in the field of EVs, solar panels, wind turbines, and charging stations, and etc. So these kind of sectors, because it's really related to the strategy of EU that Rytis, Arnoldas, and Agne mentioned about the goals EU had today.
Thank you very much, Simonas. So now a little bit burning question for many young people who are actually come up with startup ideas. So how do you manage to attract investors' attention to climate startups? And is the return on investment sufficient to invest in it? And what are the risks? Sorry for so many questions, but I think this is all related. So maybe you, Simonas or Ignas, could answer.
So I can start now talking about once again about In Balance. So how we started everything. Today in Lithuania, for example, we have 0.15% of electrical vehicles from the whole number of big cars. And in the future, I believe everybody will agree that we'll have, much more EVs than we have today. So a majority of standard cars will be replaced by EVs, and it will be need to charge it. And from a first perspective, it sounds quite easy. Just we need to build more chargers in the streets. But we will face issues, and actually we're already facing those issues because we have lack of electricity supply during some period of years, especially at the old towns. So what we can do, we can change a majority of power mains in our cities. It will cost billions of euros. And the most important thing, it will emit a lot of CO2. So, or alternatively, we can adjust smart solutions that Ignas mentioned about technologies and smart solutions that would help to make a good transition. So we can adjust such as technologies. And for example, from imbalance perspective, we created a charging station that has communication with the power main. So we see when we have a capacity at the network to charge the electrical vehicle, and we used that power. There is no need for additional reservation of a power for charging. In this case, there is no need to reconstruct the current infrastructure and etc. So yeah, answering about, is it important today or is it important, it will be important in the future. So definitely climate topics or climate startups are relevant and important already today. About risks. So as I mentioned at the very beginning, the situation of understanding climate change and the problems we have from it is growing significantly, and more clients, from our side, already agree that there is a climate change, and but still the change is not as fast as it should be. So I believe the main risk is that companies will be focused more into their numbers, into their revenues, and will not take big part in some kind of project that would help to stop climate change.
Yeah, I could just add on some questions on Simona's remarks. So for instance, we closed 2019 with 7.2 million EVs worldwide in general. Half of those EVs, almost half of it, comes from China. Second place is taken by European Union, and then US and other countries have a little piece of EVs worldwide. But what's essential here to highlight is that there are like different analysts who forecast that until 2030 we'll have up to 70 millions of EVs worldwide sold worldwide, and half of these EVs probably again comes from China, but the number is so huge that the business opportunity is there. And again, I will mention that fact, which is very important to highlight again, that startups that are focusing on sustainable energy transition or sustainability in general, they are not NGOs. They're focusing on financial returns, financial gain, and there is clear rationality behind the ideas. And I believe that Imbalance Grid has very clear arguments why it makes sense, even from the planet perspective, but as well as from business perspective. So yeah.
Thank you very much, Ignas. Now, actually, because you and Simonas experienced firsthand startup life, and you probably saw some blank spots where you needed help, or maybe lack of funding, resources, scale, that you think maybe government would be able to help. Could you maybe share those blank spots?
Yes, of course, but today the situation is a bit different. Again, Arnaldas mentioned the European Commission Blue Invest Fund initiative. There are like different initiatives that helps startups to move much faster from the financial perspective, from grant perspective with the zero interest loans or whatever, and etc. etc. Network is crucial here. Network of possible partners or corporates who could help us to accelerate more in different fields. Employment support schemes are very important as well. So there are different kinds of topics that could be could be maybe created in one package, let's say like this. So the startup could have the support from all the sides that they need. So yeah, probably financial part is one of the crucial part here, because especially for early stage startups, financial resources are very important, especially if you are from Lithuania, let's say, a small country that are trying to reach global market and trying to compete with global players. It's essential to have financial support that could help your startup to fight against those competitors. So probably that's the key.
Simonas, you have something to add, please.
Yeah, I definitely agree. The bigness regarding financial support is really important, especially at the early stage of the startups. However, support could be not only direct support. I mean, for example, let's agree that till 2028, Lithuania will be one of the best countries of electric vehicles per 1,000 people. And in this case, government should support purchase of new EVs for the end consumers. And in this case, us, like in Balance, can ensure number of charging stations in the streets to make charging sessions for these early adopters of EVs more comfortable.
Thank you very much, Simonas. Now I would like to actually give the same question to policymaker side. Maybe you could elaborate why there is such a strong disconnection between private and public sectors, or you think that everything is fine? Maybe Rytis, you can start.
Yeah, so there's always area for improvement. You never can be more advanced. Sky is the limit. But yeah, I think we are already in a good situation. I'm more thinking about the energy field, and we have seen, speaking about this startup development, very real life example. I think in Lithuania is the prosumer development. So back in 2017, at the beginning of 2017, we had a ambitious target for prosumer development in Lithuania. We said, we had 300 prosumers, it's actual consumers who have a solar rooftop. And we said we are going to have 30,000 after 4 years. A lot of people laugh us in the face. It's impossible. But now we are almost 4 years past. We have less than 30,000. We have over 7,000 prosumers now. But having this vision, we allocated the financial resources, we created a good regulatory framework, and this led to various businesses to develop and different stage businesses. One companies are installers, another are financiers. We have startups which are working with IT tools to make PV development more efficient, and so on and so forth. So this is, I think, a very practical example how setting an ambitious target from the policy perspective brings very much real life gains for the economy and citizens in general. So I think this is there are good examples of private public sector cooperation, and yeah, I think it's as I said, sky's the limit, but we are on the good track. And I think, as we discussed, having this ambition towards 2030 and having the economy recovery packages coming in, it really can kick these sustainable sectors to develop. And speaking to Simonas, I just want to add that last week we had our alternative fuel law approved in the parliament, and now it's on the way to the parliament. And it sets a really ambitious target. It says, we are incentivizing EVs until it reaches 10% of Lithuania's car pool. So it means from today's data, it's about 150,000 cars. So it is strong I would say statement from the policy perspective that we are setting this milestone to achieve, and we are going to put a skin in the game, so to say. So I think it's happening. Sometimes it's not happening that fast, as some stakeholders might expect. But I think it's from various sectors, and today we covered even in this discussion, energy, agriculture, transport. So it's happening, and I think it's more and more to come.
Thank you very much, Rytis. Now I would like to continue this topic and ask Arnoldas, maybe Europe is the common denominator that could unite private and public sector. Could you share your opinion?
Well, Europe is a common denominator that unites many things, and it is our common home and a place for not only sharing ideas and experience, but of course of moving ahead. I would probably be a bit less upbeat than Rytis when we talk about our country, Lithuania. Yes, there are good examples of cooperation between private and public sector, but overall, I think we should be quite open and honest to say that the partnership is quite weak, and definitely potential is not used as in many other member states, especially to the west or to the north of us, and the Nordic countries are a very good example to follow here. And I think the main reason is the lack of trust, not only in this relationship, but in many other relationships we have in Lithuania. The problem of them is lack of trust between each other. We've seen that a lot in the COVID-19 pandemic, especially in the very beginning, where indeed the lack of trust between the public and private sector also, I would say, impacted the speed and the efficiency of business support for many SMEs and other businesses which needed liquidity very quickly. And it's something that didn't happen overnight. I think it's an inheritance of the Soviet era. I think it's still certain remains of this Homo Sovieticus phenomenon, unfortunately, where we start our relationships with the lack of trust, and sometimes with the rather presumption of guilt rather than innocence, and only later we move into the full relationship of trust. So that we have to really change. We have to really change, especially when we talk about digital and green, where we need much more trust between each other. We need much more risk. We need much more ambition, especially if we want to compete globally with the United States, with China and others. And here, especially if you look at the field of science, for instance, Lithuania is one of the least publicly financing research and innovation, less than 1% of GDP. The private investment in R&D is even less. It's, if I'm not mistaken, 0.6 or something of GDP, which is really not enough if we want to achieve those ambitions we're talking about here. And if we want to really make Lithuania innovative, digital, and future rather than past looking. And these things we have to talk about. that without a much more closer coordination and cooperation between the government, the business, and the science, the academic institutions, we will not be able to make this this breakthrough. And I agree with Ignas that we have to look at the climate challenge and the European Green Deal not as a problem, but as an opportunity, and not perhaps talk in this project fear terms. Of course, climate change is producing a lot of very, very negative effects for our humanity and for our planet, but we have to talk increasingly about the great opportunities it brings. And therefore, President von der Leyen talks about the Green Deal as a new way of economic growth in Europe, as a new model of economic growth. It talks about it as being profitable and not costly, as being forward-looking, and really, if you are the first in those innovations, you will probably will be the first one to reap benefits along the way. And this is, I think, the way to look at it, and also the way to maybe rally better the government and business along this same goal.
Okay, thank you, Arnoldas. So that's definitely, we see that we have a lot of opportunities, but also a lot of space for improvement. I would like to ask Agne, maybe you have something to add, maybe also from Nordic countries, and your just some additional thoughts from the discussion.
Of course, yes. For me, hearing Arnoldas discussing trust is like music to my ears, because oftentimes in the Nordics we hear that trust is a Nordic goal. And I think that is one of the crucial parts that will actually really make the transition towards carbon neutrality and the solutions, find the search for solutions and the implementation much, much faster. So definitely an important part. Here, I think it's also very important to take a little bit of a step back, because in this discussion, we have been so focused on energy and on transport. It's important to remember the size of the issue, how many fields it actually covers, from health to, as mentioned, agriculture, to the way we communicate with each other, the interactions we have are everyday, and the fundamental ideas and values we have around our lives. So I think with having such a big threat that we face, it's been really good to hear the ideas from Simonas and Ignas, and hearing the crucial steps startups are taking in tackling this problem, because some problems that we face can only be solved by these challenging and smart solutions. And here we need the tech, and here we need the research. And some solutions can only be done by our public sector, and giving the support, to guiding the direction, and to staying consistent with our priorities. So here, I guess, from the Nordic side, collaboration and cooperation and all of us staying on the same page is crucial. And finding ways to work together better, work together more, and share these experiences with each other between the different sectors, from startups to our society to public sector, to as well between different nations.
Thank you very much, Agne. That was wonderful. And I hope that today's discussion brought us a little bit closer towards collaboration between public and private sector. Thank you very much for you all for participating, and have a nice day.
Welcome back, everyone. Let's keep talking about those world-changing startups. Estonian unicorn Bolt could definitely be considered one. It has transformed the mobility industry and has a major commitment to sustainability, including a 10 million environmental impact fund. Today, Žygimantas Zabieta, innovation expert and co-founder of Impact Meetups, are talking with Sandra Saraf, head of sustainability at Bolt. They will discuss creating minimal viable planet and Bolt's efforts in fighting the climate change.
Hello, everyone, tuning in for GovTech Week events to talk about sustainability and minimum viable planet. What does that mean? I am Žygimantas Zabieta, innovation expert and sustainability consultant, founder of Impact Meetups, a platform to talk about sustainability. Therefore, it's a pleasure for me to be a moderator of this fireside chat with an amazing person, Ms. Sandra Saraf from Bolt, who is a sustainability manager for this amazing unicorn, changing the way we transport, the way we get our food, and the way we get from A to B. So, hello, Sandra, how are you?
Hey, thank you so much for having me. I'm doing great, and even greater now that I'm having this chat with you.
Amazing. You are in Tallinn, right?
Exactly. And actually, I'm in the office today, which is pretty rare these days. But sometimes you need to just get out of your house and, see some other people.
Yeah, this COVID crisis is really affecting us. But I would love to have an in-person conversation with you. But we are here. Everything happens online. All the conferences, all the events had to go to Zoom or other platforms.
Some people even get married online,
Exactly. And that's amazing. So, that's some companies are really happy. They look at their budgets and they see green numbers for travel because they can cut these flights and now they're emitting so much less of CO2.
Yeah, Bill Gates wrote in his blog that the CO2 emissions globally are down by 8%. So, I mean, this is for a very short period of time, but you can see how much impact it makes how we travel, actually.
Do you think that the way the habits that are changing due to COVID will remain in the future in the post-COVID world?
I wish, but I don't think so.
So you think that please.
Yeah, I think even Estonia is a good example, right? We got very much used to the fact we had to stay at home, shop as little as possible and so forth. And now it's like nothing happened in March. We're back into exactly the same pace. And for the past couple of days, actually, the cases are going up again. Mm-hmm. I think people forget super easily. And for instance, we did a study at the office because in Tallinn, we have 3 offices. So we asked people, after the COVID period, would you still like to come back to the office or work from home? And it was a very high percentage of people who said that they would prefer to work from home, like 70% of the time at least. And after a couple of months, people actually started to change their mind, thinking, okay, actually, I would like to come back to the office if possible.
Yeah. Actually, talking about conferences and events and working from home, this week I had a pleasure and an honor to participate in a conference organized by World Economic Forum for Global Shapers Community worldwide, where the final keynote was delivered by Mr. Vice President Al Gore. Mm-hmm. And since we are talking about sustainability, I would like to share some thoughts, from that conversation, from his speech. And he was, talking about that he started to talk about this more than 20 years ago, talking about the climate and what was inevitable. nobody listened. Nobody actually, cared about that. And especially the politicians and the big corporations, they're doing their job. And 20 years later, we can turn back and look what happened during those 20 years. And the climate change has come. And there's so many things happening all around the world, and nobody was listening until recently, where we had this amazing Greta Thunberg. And thanks to young people, most importantly, young people who drag the attention to the cause, and they said that sustainability is important and we're desperate of action. And to tackle climate change and the challenges, we need to replace bad practices with the good practices,
and make more conscious choices.
Yeah, and to do that, we need disruptive approach. And for governments and for all businesses, it's difficult to be disruptive. And here we have Bolt, which is a startup, which is a tech startup, which is a startup full of young people, I suppose.
So well, I'm 31, and when I joined the company 1 year ago, I brought up the average age a lot.
Amazing. So please tell me, what is your company's response to the challenges, and how you see yourself in this global perspective? What is happening in the planet?
Yeah, so I joined Bolt 1+ years ago, but Bolt as a company was already founded in 2013. We expanded to Lithuania in 2015, I checked. And the purpose why the company was actually established in the first place was to reduce personal dependency on individual cars, right? So globally, or at the European level, people have on average 700 cars per 1,000 people. The worst thing about cars is you use them only 5% of the time. 95% of the time, your car sits somewhere on a parking slot. Cities like Vilnius and Tallinn have at least 3 parking spots per 1 car. And this is roughly 40 to 60 square meters of space. Space we could use for parks, for new schools, for new apartments even. 40 to 60 square meters, that's quite a lot. So actually the fact that we use personal cars not only creates CO2 emissions, it actually takes away our city space as well. So Bolt's function is, or how we operate is, we hire drivers who have to be professional drivers according to the national requirements, but they use their own cars. So globally, we have 1 million drivers on our platform. We're in 35 countries around the world, and we have more than 1 million drivers, and they use their own cars. So actually, we make use of the car that would otherwise sit somewhere in a parking lot, and we try to make it as efficient as possible, right? Fast forward to last year, 2019, when people started, more and more talk about the green stuff, despite Al Gore's presentation on, climate change that he presented 20 years ago. And we started to realize that we need to take action as well. We say that we try to make the best use of personal cars, but the fact is, out of those 1 million cars globally, probably like 90% at least are internal combustion engine cars. So the biggest CO2 emitters, the biggest greenhouse gas emitters. Even though we try to introduce electric vehicles on the platform, they're still too expensive. The prices have gone down over the past 8 years, but still the biggest price drop will probably happen in the next 3-4 years. So far, they're not affordable to regular citizens, and also meaning our drivers, right? So our drivers will not sell their personal car and change it for an electric vehicle if it's today much more expensive, if there's no charging infrastructure or state subsidies and so forth. So last year we committed to a green plan, Bolt Green Plan, and we started offsetting all of our European rides. So basically we did in-house calculations on how much CO2 our cars emit, the cars that are on our platform, taking into account the motor type of the car, the age of the car, so forth. Going to the passenger to pick the passenger up and then take the passenger to the end destination. And based on this, we started offsetting our rides. But that was only the first step in 2019. And now we're looking at different aspects, how to expand with micromobility. meaning e-scooters, because they're much more environmentally friendly. How to get more electric vehicles or low emission or zero emission vehicles on the platform. And even we think about our offices. We try to create hotspots in offices so people would actually come in when they need to. We're limiting free parking because an OECD study showed that people are 15% more likely to come to the office if they have free parking than if they didn't, right? And we're looking to also use green electricity where possible. But out of the 35 countries where we operate, so far only around 7 countries offer green electricity options. So there's a lot to do.
Yeah, it's a lot to do not only for corporations, but for different governments to adapt to the needs. And this is very interesting when, you know, a company, a tech startup, is pushing for a green electricity, and not all the countries has these things to offer. But coming back to the your fleets and the vehicles, I have to share my personal observations. That every time I order Bolt, there is in Vilnius, there is the high probability that Toyota Prius will come, a hybrid car that will take you. And you know, it's very common to talk with the driver and ask these questions. I myself been working in the electric vehicle industry for a couple of years already, and so what they say is that, of course, it's you know, everything comes to money, and they're driving Prius not because it's you know, super fine feeling to drive the car, but for them it's so much cheaper.
Exactly. The Priuses are the most popular cars in our platform in Vilnius or in Lithuania. But it's not only the drivers who are price sensitive, it's also the users. When we launched our green plan, we did a study around 6 European countries. And basically we asked the people, would you use more greener options for transport if they were available? 90+% people said that they would. And then we asked, would you still use it if it's more expensive? Mm-hmm. And then again, 90+% people said they wouldn't. So we have to raise, you know, consumer awareness and teach them how to make more conscious or more greener choices.
Exactly. You know, it's very common to hear from climate skeptics that sustainability does not pay off. So why then Bolt is investing in sustainability? Why do you have this strategy? Is this argument valid?
I've read some studies. It's valid from the point of view that it's not economically sustainable. So all these kind of aspects for us as a company, in the short term, they cost us more money. You know, electric vehicles are much more expensive than, you know, internal combustion engine cars. A regular, you know, Fiat I can buy. Also, when we started offsetting, it means extra cost, right? So we invested some money into offsetting projects. For instance, we're creating alternative energy projects in African countries and so forth. So for us, it means extra expenditure. And as long as exactly the consumer is not willing to pay more, it means there is no return on investment so far. And for any company, especially a startup, return on investment or ROI is the most important thing. So that's why it's very hard to make this choice. You know, do we go greener and actually spend more money? Or do we take the easy way out and do it as it is? But I hope that in a matter of maximum couple of years, people are going to make more conscious choices and they realize that if there's an electric vehicle on the platform available for me, I might pay 1 or 2 euros more for my trip, but you know, this is the more responsible choice.
I would like to challenge this argument. If we would look at the statistics now, and like, okay, we can look at the statistics as it is now. We can look at the historical numbers from 2012, where all the most common electric vehicle was Nissan Leaf, and we can look at the future, which is inevitable and will happen in 3 to 5 years probably. Is the electric mile more expensive? Okay, then do you have any comparisons for the cost of per mile in the Toyota Prius versus other non-electric internal combustion engine cars.
Exactly. The electric mile itself will pay off pretty soon after you purchase the car. Rather, for us, the problem is we don't employ the drivers. The drivers are self-employed or they work for another business, right? And they use their own cars. So we don't provide the cars for them. So for an average person who earns a bit more than minimum wage or earns average wage for driving for any platform, for them to make this initial investment of buying an electric car, this is much more expensive for them to begin with. And that's the problem right now. So unless there are government subsidies available, not many of those drivers have this money to take out of their pocket and purchase an electric car, right? And furthermore, for the taxi service providers such as us, you need to travel even a couple of 100 kilometers within the city. So if you go and use gas, you pump your gas into your car, it takes you 2 minutes or 5 minutes and you can have a hot dog. If you have to charge the car and there are no fast or ultra fast charging stations available, you're going to lose half an hour at minimum for charging the car, which means, also half an hour worth of your salary, right? So that's the question.
But I would like to wish for the company to see more and more drivers making their own personal decisions to shift to electric or hybrid vehicles from the economical perspective. When I was studying environmental management studies, the first thing that I heard in the university was saying that if you're not building a business plan out of sustainability, stop talking because people stop listening. So let's wish that the market will push the electric transportation more and more into your fleet.
Absolutely.
But then we can go to the scooters. That's a new thing. The scooters, some people like them, some people hate them, and they're everyone has an opinion about a scooter in central Vilnius, or we can hear stories from other cities all around the world where this mean of transport is getting more traction and is becoming more and more popular. So what is your strategy about the scooters? Why did you decide? Is it really how does it play? How does it look in your sustainability plan and
Okay, so before I go back to your comment on some people hate the scooters, only two types of people hate the scooters. The ones who haven't tried them yet, and then the ones who tried them and liked them so much, and then they started complaining that we walk too little and we use too much scooters. Everyone else loves the scooters.
I will believe that. Okay.
But yes, Bolt started with the electric scooters in 2018 in Paris. We're not there anymore with electric scooters, but now we're there with electric bikes because the electric scooter market was already, full basically. But we introduced last year across the Baltics, including in Vilnius, in Riga, in Tallinn, and this year we expanded to other cities as well. And actually why we introduced these scooters is that as a transportation platform, we're at a very unique position because we have a very wide user base who uses our cars already. So now we were the very first platform to introduce e-scooters to the same platform where you already had cars. So already ride hailing, right? And it means we can incentivize people to switch from ride hailing to e-scooters for shorter trips. Like when the trip is shorter than 3 kilometers, we're just launching a recommendation feature, which would say to the user, there's a traffic jam ahead, or it's just 1 kilometer or 2 kilometer. Take an e-scooter instead, because this is much more economically, economically as well feasible, but also environmentally friendly, right? And if you have in a city 2,000 scooters per 100,000 citizens already, it means people are more likely to switch to e-scooters, and at least 100,000, 200,000 ride-hailing trips are not done within a year, and people switch to e-scooters instead, which is a massive number. And actually, we started now manufacturing and designing our own e-scooters. because last year we used the regular market model, which is actually developed by a company. Everyone uses those models. And these were first intended to individual users. Like I would go to an electronic store, I would buy an e-scooter and use it, and maybe use it for 5-10 kilometers per day. Mm-hmm. If you have the scooters for rentals, it means they are used as much as they can, right? Yeah. With the old model, you could use it for 20 kilometers and the battery ran out. Then you expand the battery version or use swappable batteries. You can extend the battery life. But still, those scooters weren't meant for continuous use by people just picking them up on the street. And that's why there was a study made in the US, which said that, the average life cycle of a scooter is 28 days. Which would be crazy.
That study. That was crazy.
Yeah, because the biggest part of the scooter CO2 emissions is how the manufacturing part, so how it's made. So easy mathematics says if you expand the lifespan or life cycle of the scooter, then you can reduce the CO2 emissions, because when you use, especially when you use green electricity for charging it, there are no emissions from the rides itself, only the manufacturing process. So we started manufacturing and designing our own e-scooters. We have figured that the lifespan is between 36 months to 60 months, so even up to 5 years, which would significantly reduce the CO2 emissions. Yeah. But also we have made the scooters 90% of aluminium. So the same lightweight aluminium that's used in space industry. So that's super recyclable. And also the steel and plastic bits are recyclable. So our scooters are more than 90% recyclable. And when we use mechanics in all of the cities where we operate, we teach users how to treat the scooters better, just don't throw it somewhere. This all means we can expand the life cycle of the e-scooter, and it means this is basically virtually CO2 less form of ride for the people. And within the sustainability plan, basically we have, when it comes to green, we are having two options. So we try to change the business verticals. Instead of internal combustion engine cars, we use electric vehicles or try to use them more. And then also we try to switch from ride hailing altogether to micromobility. And what we can't do inherently, then we offset. So, but e-scooters are an excellent example of how to get around in a city with basically no CO2 emissions.
I want to challenge this. From this greenwashing perspective, sustainable consumption or a consumption of an ecological product is not better than avoiding of consumption at all. Meaning that does it always replace a drive of the car? I mean, the scooter. Isn't it like it is fun to drive? It's quick to drive. My question is if some lazy people do not replace walking to scooters, or people that that have bikes, they replacing those with bikes that has zero electricity for their use, right? They replace it with scooters. So how is that? How many?
Yeah, it's a really good comment actually, and as I mentioned, there are only two types of people who hate the scooters, and one of those who have tried it and liked it so much that they switch from walking to scooters. So that's always, a possibility. But again, as with, I said in the offices, people thought that they would only like to work from home. And now they realize, okay, we would actually like to come back to the office. It's the same with e-scooters. Even if at first you switch from walking to e-scooting, then at some point you realize, okay, I miss my walking as well. But for us, as I mentioned in the beginning, we have this unique user base, and we try to focus on switching people from ride hailing to e-scooters. So not from walking to e-scooters, but rather from ride-hailing to e-scooters. So this would have this impact already. But of course, you're right. Some people love it so much that switch their biking and walking to e-scooters. But I personally do all of them. I bike, I walk, I take an e-scooter. And the better bits of the e-scooter is you can take it from somewhere, you can leave it for somewhere. You don't have to think about, locking it. Where do I take my bike with me? Maybe it starts raining. Now I would like to take the bus home instead, or a Bolt home instead. Where do I put my bike? So that's the convenience and really the significance of e-scooter, that it gives you so much flexibility.
It also depends the way people commute, the way people transport from A to B. It also depends on the government and the role that the public services are provided. So from your perspective, how differently countries and municipalities are dealing with transportation in different countries? You're operating in 35, so probably you have a quite a base to compare.
Yeah, so our e-scooters are in 42 cities. And here I would like to, honestly, from the bottom of my heart, take the opportunity to say Vilnius is doing a really good job. When COVID, the pandemic or the crisis started, then Vilnius city approached us and said, maybe you can bring out scooters earlier to streets this year so we can offer alternatives to public transport. This was a unique. We're in 42 cities with the e-scooters, and no other city did that. So, hands together here for Vilnius, really. But I mentioned we're mostly in Europe and Africa. In Europe, we're not only in countries where there are regulatory burdens. So if there's some sort of old regulation that does not prohibit, new transport modes such as platform taxis, that's a reason where we're not there. Or the UK only now deregulated the e-scooter market because their legislation was 200 or so years old. Yeah. And if you write a piece of legislation long enough, it stands the test of time and you can actually block future innovation, right? Yeah. So it very much depends on the attitude of the cities. But us as Bolt, we try to be as compliant with any regulation or new law as possible. So we always negotiate with the city. We don't, just jump into some market and say our service is now here when we haven't negotiated with the city or the government. But the approach is very different. For instance, coming back to the sustainability point, when it comes to e-scooters, one of the biggest bits of the CO2 emissions is how you deploy the scooters, how to take them from the warehouse, put them on the street. Do you use a diesel car, a diesel van, or do you use an electric van, right? Or maybe you use swappable batteries, meaning you can go to the scooter and change the battery there and take it back to the warehouse to be charged again. And some cities push requirements such as you cannot keep the scooters on the streets overnight, which means you're doing extra trips to transport the scooters back from warehouses. And if you use diesel vans for that, this is even more environmental responsibility. So many in those 35 countries, we have so many different rules and regulations for ride-hailing business, for e-scooters as well. But we're trying to negotiate with the cities and find the middle way that's suitable for both of us.
Thank you very much. Going back to the essence of the discussion, we are talking about MVP, about minimum viable planet, and it's true that there's only one planet and we are over-consuming, and there are no planet B, or there is no plan B, right? So what is the future of mobility? It looks like from sustainability perspective. How do you see the mobility sector evolving, and how it should evolve to serve the purpose of saving the planet?
Really, really good question. One of the main things here, I think, is public sector and private sector working together. Like even today, I live, let's say, 6 kilometers away from the office. There's no bus that comes directly from my house to the office. So what I do is use combination of bus and then an e-scooter. I use the e-scooter as the last mile option. So in an ideal future, we would have something like the mobility as a service or multimodality. So an integrated platform for the user. When they open up the app and say, I want to get from point A to point C, then it tells you, first mile, take with the scooter, then use a bus, and then maybe the last mile pool or use a Bolt taxi, right? Because today, with public transport, at least in Tallinn, is that it's very, very slow. It shouldn't take you more than 40 minutes to move from door to door from your home to your office, for instance. But if you have to switch buses, or if you have to walk and then, or bike or etc., in Tallinn it takes, in 80% cases, it takes more than 40 minutes to go from point A to point B, which means people think it's much easier to take my own car.
Yeah.
So the future of mobility would include less personal cars, less dependency on personal cars, because the public transport and the private sector have evolved together to offer any kind of a mobility service that's most feasible for the user. Because when you sit in a personal car, you just spend your time holding your wheel. You're not productive at this time, so no one wins from it. You sit at a traffic jam and then you park the car somewhere. So what's the win-win? It's only lose-lose.
Yeah. Actually, please.
So what I wanted to say is that if public transport and private service providers develop this mobility together, I think that would be the best case scenario.
I remember 2 years ago, probably 2 or 3 years ago, there was a login conference in Lithuania, and there was a mobility panel, and there was a presenter from, let's say, the old automakers, the old guys. Presenting the future mobility and showing amazing video of a person landing from the plane, taking the bus, then the scooter, then the cab, then taking a car sharing, and so the whole mobility package. And he was actually presenting it on the stage that was sponsored by a Lithuanian startup that already kind of implemented half of it, just the side of the AI. And this augmented reality guy saying you what to do in the library, but you can actually open the app and switch different get the recommendations for switching different mobility platforms right away. And it's amazing to see that Bolt is also, it's not only another Uber, it's so much more. And then not only giving a ride, but you're also recommending to take a scooter. You also help us to get our food on our tables.
Yeah.
With Bolt Food, that also reduces traffic from home to restaurant and back. And it's it's up to us to choose more sustainable way to get from point to A to point B. And we need those companies that can disrupt the market. And it's amazing to live in the region where we have plenty of such companies. And it's super happy that those companies become a global players and unicorns. And so thank you for your time. Thank you for your insights, and let's hope that mobility will be more and more sustainable. And if you have a final word, the floor is yours.
First word is achu. Yes. And second is make more responsible choices.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.
After such an engaging fireside chat, let's move to our last discussion of the day. We heard a lot today about the role of startups and how powerful they can be. However, how do you go about building one? What is climate startup and how can you create it and ensure it lasts? Today, we have a very distinguished guest to discuss that, who have numerous years of experience in funding and accelerating such startups. We have joining us today Arvidas Pleta, partner at Catalysta Ventures, Thomas Kemtys, partner at Contrarian Ventures, Cristobal Alonso, Global CEO and General Partner at Startup Wise Guys, who will be moderating the discussion. Let's join them.
Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the panel. Very happy to have with me both Arvidas and Thomas. I am Cristobal Alonso. I'm the CEO of Startup Wise Guys, likely the largest accelerator by now almost in Europe, and a proud investor in the Baltics, running a fund in Lithuania and a fund in Estonia. But we're not here to talk about me, we talk about climate, about sustainability. Thomas, Arvidas, I will ask you guys to introduce. Arvidas, we start with you. But apart from introducing yourself, what is a climate startup? What will be your best? So each of you kind of say, what is your best definition to ground the discussion about what do you understand? Because there is not a clear definition about a climate startup.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so well, everyone, super happy to be here with such a good company. So starting with maybe Catalysta Ventures, where I'm from. So we are having two kind of different streams. One of them, we are working with early stage sustainable startups. And by sustainability, we mean triple top line. So people, planet, and profit. Three keywords. And the second activity we do is corporate innovation. So we have big organizations with their innovation strategies, starting with sprints, hackathons, also corporate accelerators as well. And briefly about me, so I started kind of my innovation journey and startup journey like 7 years ago, working in a big organization. Quickly understood that, I want to be outside of big organization, to be like a startup, and here I am. I joined Catalysta Ventures. And last 2 years, I'm working in more or less corporate innovation field. So trying to match startups, B2B startups with corporates. That's kind of what I do. And you also wanted to kind of talk about climate startups already, yeah, in a sense. So I guess we can discuss it later on a bit. But for me, I mean, I really love this kind of way. That's why I joined Catalysta Ventures with triple top line. So people, planet, and profit. So if we talk at least about planet thing, I also kind of, understand also profit part. And I think that's very two crucial parts which needs to go together. So I really love this kind of dual thing coming together, and then we can discuss it later on. So for me, it's this part of the equation.
Good, thank you. Thomas?
Sure. Look, so Cristobal, Arvidas, pleasure. And Cristobal, thanks for moderating. Great to be here. Fantastic initiative. So I'm a partner at the Contrarian Ventures. It's an early stage venture capital fund focused on two verticals. One is energy technology, and another one is electrification of the mobility industries. And the way we see it, both of these converging and meeting somewhere in the middle, for example, an electric vehicle charging infrastructure and stuff like that. So we look at the startups operating exactly in this space. We'll look at the startups based in Europe only, the whole Europe and Israel. We've been around since 2017, 2018. 2018, we made the first investment. And now we have 16 portfolio companies across Europe. So we have 4 companies in the UK in smart thermostat spaces, disaggregator spaces, electric bike optimization spaces. We have a company in Israel in the hydrogen electrolysis space. We have a few drone companies in France and the Baltics that looks at the infrastructure inspection, automation, as well as we have carbon credit startup based in Norway. So we all over the place. We based primarily in Vilnius in Lithuania. Our limited partners come from here, but we definitely don't fully focus on the Baltics, though Baltics and Lithuania are very, very important to us. We invested in a number of companies here. So we are very much plugged into the sustainability, sort of implicitly plugged into the sustainability dialogue and impact. And sometimes we even forget about it because that's the only startups we look at, right? We never look at fintech or e-commerce or marketplaces or anything like that. So it's all implicit, but at the same time, we're going another step deeper to really sort of trying to see look at the data and see how much of the sort of CO2 is being extracted and stuff like that. So before that, I was working in London for 7 years in the various roles in finance, most in the corporate finance world as an investment banker, and then for the last 2 years I've been doing this. And to try to answer Cristobal's question on what is a climate tech, what is a climate startup, for me, sort of, it's very much sort of you go through all the things in the middle and really sort of end up at the end of sort of, hey, what's the direct CO2 impact on the planet from this exact technology or the startup, so you can, in some startups, you can easily, it's easier to quantify it. I've seen, Tesla can say, look, 3 megatons or whatever CO2 has been left outside of here because of our cars. And some startups is much, much harder, especially in the very early stage. But at the end of the day, this is the way we look at it, though it's not as simple.
Is that kind of almost building on that one already? Is that a metric on the fund? So I'm both also, Arvidas, we can go for you. Like, a normal fund will look at return on investment. They might have some kind of specifications, some of the impact ones they're trying to put. So somebody related to climate to sustainability, what kind of KPIs beyond return of investment can be measured, right? Because I think at the end of the day, we're looking at, so how do you measure that your portfolio is more sustainable or has a bigger impact on climate than others, right? For example. So how are you measuring that, Thomas? I go you first because you have it, but Arvidas, we can basically build on that one afterwards.
Yeah, for sure. So, for us, again, I would say it's pretty easy. Some companies, like the company called Choose in Norway, what they do is basically they do a lot of things, but one simple thing is you can say, if you fly Norwegian Airlines and, fly London to New York business class, there's going to be X of tons of CO2 that plane or yourself during the journey will consume. So, and you can easily offset using that platform because they buy carbon credits and they invest in, let's say, solar panel farms or wind farms somewhere in Bangladesh or other emerging countries. And, you can easily say that, okay, so they're consumers or buyers of those credits have bought, X tons of credits. Here's the answer. In some is more difficult. So we don't have one overarching KPI for our startups. Every startup has their specific KPIs. This could be from units of smart thermostat installed in the community houses, or a number of megawatt hours charged for the electric vehicles, or the miles driven by the delivery drivers. So we have the startup called Bold Bikes, based out of Australia, UK, and Silicon Valley, and they've done already their couriers using those bikes and the software done already 2 million trips of deliveries, including of those electric bikes, really saving enormous amount of CO2 from the emitting to the planet. So, specific KPIs, we don't have one general for the fund, even though we are one of the few funds that sort of fully offset the CO2 emissions in our part of Europe using our own portfolio company Choose, but there's definitely more. We have done it before.
Okay, Arvidas, how are you looking at this when you're looking at investments early stage?
I'm coming back to, again, this triple top line kind of part. So we are looking to these 3 parts. And from investment part, it's very easy, kind of, from people, profit, and planet. So from planet perspective, usually, in the end of the day, it's easiest way to count CO2 emissions. I totally agree. Even though, there are some other measurements as well, and we are kind of going for positive kind of impact. So it's kind of hard to say, but let's take one example as well. We also worked with Tingly startup, which is kind of international gift experience startup. So, with that one, we had different targets. So one of them, it was to kind of, as people are doing some activities, so we wanted to kind of offset every activity with CO2 kind of thing. So we did it. But at the same time, if startup have some kind of, manufacturing things, or they are using some kind of, plastic or something else in their distribution channels. So we try to eliminate that as well. So for them, exactly, it was a package which was not sustainable in the beginning. So we changed that kind of, we help them to change this kind of part as well. So, it's usually we are trying to go through all the chain of a startup and see, if anywhere is a negative impact, we try to eliminate that. The same with people. So if it is in social part, so usually, in Lithuania, maybe startups is not so common, but if we go and talk about people who are kind of distributing things, or buying things, or doing some things in Africa or in other countries, so the social part can be also very important. So, all three parts, people, planet, and profit, we aim to be positive. So not negative, not even neutral, but positive. That's the goal. And I agree with Thomas, it's super hard to count one kind of measurement. Well, probably, everyone knows CO2, so it's easiest, I agree. But it's not the only one.
Is there a specific profile of founder, right? So we are both coming from the investment point of view. They want to go there. Is there something different that you notice, Thomas, when investing in this type of startups versus your regular startup? Do they think differently? Do they actually have more trade-offs to make on their process because of the focus on being sustainable? Or once you have this purpose, you kind of treat them as a normal founder, let's say, all the way?
Absolutely. Look, for me, it's a bit harder to compare. I all the time I've been investing was in the folks working in these spaces, but it's really, I think it's really normal. I think the folks we invest, we have our LPs gave their money to us to allocate capital into the financial return maximizing startups. So that's what we do. We know. We don't do any social projects, so we really look at everything business model and the margins and stuff like that. And the founders, the absolute normal. I don't think. I think there's post the clean tech 1.0 boom and bust in 2005, 2006 and onwards in the US mostly. I think we got this now clean tech 2.0, but clean tech is obviously a part of the whole sustainability things, and a lot more things are involved in it. But I think, given the amount of exits that we've seen in variety in battery storage, EV charging infrastructure space, battery spaces, and both in Europe and US, I think everyone realized now, look, there's money to be made in the VC world investing in clean tech. So you got the founders, maybe the only, I would say probably most of the successful startup founders will have that passion, but most of the founders we have in our portfolio company have a huge passion for the clean tech. So, bunch of them, if they afford, they drive Teslas, they have smart homes, if they can have the opportunity to have it and stuff like that, and they really care about the planet. But the backgrounds that we get, it's a variety of them. The Choose company, a carbon credit company in Norway, the guy's an ex lawyer for 15 years, but he's been interestingly in oil and gas industry. So really seeing the, sort of the folks that we co-invest with, because now we co-invest with Shell and BP, which before we're seeing, oh my God, these are the black oil folks. It's not great, but now they massively shifting to the renewable energy, and they have huge corporate venture funds to back it up. So other founders have been in the industry doing something else technically in some of the large corporates like Bosch and stuff, and now decided to go and do a battery startup because they've seen the difficulties that the customers been having. So a variety of founder profiles. They have a definitely passion for clean tech and cleaner planet, but they all I think most of them do think about potential exit, making some money in and doing good for the planet. So I think that's sort of overarching thematic.
And you, Arvidas, have you noticed this kind of doing good for the planet almost gives extra drive to those founders? Or in a way, that's part of who they are. But you have seen a bit of everything.
Mm-hmm. So there are two types of these people. I would say one of them, I totally agree with Thomas. If it is a bit later stage, we call later if people already have traction, so it's already later stage. So in that stage, usually people already kind of, I would say, they're regular ones. So they understand the business perspective and what we also maybe see, and I guess it's also important topic to touch a bit, that there are lots of super early stage kind of startups and with solo founders who have very crazy ideas, and they want to be super sustainable, but they don't think about business yet, and that's also our goal in some of the projects, to help them, as we participate in lots of these kind of super early stage, I would say, competitions, hackathons, and so on. And I see that every 10th of these kind of crazy green people, kind of in the way that they are kind of even don't think about business in the beginning, they are kind of transforming to that regular founder. So this is another angle, I would say, that there are kind of either regular business.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, I would say that, even the startups who are not sustainable today, which we also see very much often, and they kind of think about scaling. We start talking with them. We start kind of seeing other partnerships, other investments, maybe later stage, and they understand when it's needed thing for them as well, if we want to move forward. So it's also, I would say, if a founder is smart, they are early or later they will move to that direction as well. And the later you do it, the more costly it will become.
Is not there a difference between becoming sustainable versus becoming impactful, right? Because I could see how many startup founders, as the startup evolves, they try to have more impact. But there is certain industries that you can just not be sustainable even if you want to. Meaning that cannot be the objective of what drives you, right? But I think they can all have impact through providing good employment, fair opportunities, passion-driven education. There's a lot of things you can do, right?
Yeah. Sorry, Arvidas, go ahead.
Yeah.
That's why it's beyond probably climate. I totally agree. We're also talking about these people, profit, and planet. So three things. So actually, sometimes you can't kind of build something for the planet. But we also have examples when you are, going for profit, but also creating some kind of nice thing for the planet. Like one startup we worked in a recent project, EcoDrena. They create a smart drainage system for farmers. And it helps farmers to save lots of money because of kind of keep water and so on. At the same time, it saves rivers and other kind of water bodies up to 40% of pesticides. So it's kind of one extra thing we managed to do, and now we can kind of accomplish both parts. But yeah. I totally agree that it don't need to go all the time through.
Yeah, and if I just, Cristobal, might just add, we see this sustainability versus impactful as just such an important discussion. I think sometimes people or companies sort of overdo it. If there's a microfinance company helping consumers in Bangladesh, it's not like they need to build now solar panels on the rooftop to suddenly be carbon neutral or carbon positive. There's they're already doing a very impactful thing. Or Revolut, obviously they do emit a lot of probably CO2 during their servers work, but it's still a company that serves some sort of purpose. So I think sustainability, especially these days, have become sort of very hot word for everyone wants to be a part of it, and there's a lot of this greenwashing, as we see now industry, about announcements every day from the big corporates of we are a green company and we do this and do that, but really need to look
why is that I think because the UN goals have been there for times. The climate discussions, big conference and between countries have been there almost for a decade, I would say, almost on the mainstream. Why suddenly, everything is sustainability, right? In the last, 6 to 9 months, is this COVID and people start thinking about this more seriously? So what's happening right now that everything is sustainability almost, again, I think the point was even beyond impact, which I think in my view could be as important or more even the sustainability.
Yeah.
So what's happening right now? Anything is very specific?
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's a good point. I think there's a few factors. COVID definitely played a big role. I think once people seen the clear skies through their flats, like, oh crap, this could be, a sky without the smog, like in China or larger cities like London. So I think people maybe felt more sort of obliged to do something about it. But I think we've seen a lot of that even before the COVID from last year, from big announcements in World Economic Forum by the founder of Larry Fink of BlackRock, making a huge corporate announcement how they're not going to fund, not going to invest in some of the asset classes that work with fossil fuels and stuff like that. And I think a lot of it is that it sells. We got the new generation of consumers that care more about things, about sustainability, impactfulness, taking care of the planet and other people. So, hence a lot of this greenwashing. Everyone wants to be a part of it. Now, sort of, it's not like it's a good thing that you just do it or announce something. It's really bad if you don't do it. So everyone's just rushing to be sure. Look, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, all of these large corporates that were financing fossil fuel industries and making millions out of it suddenly, find a small loophole and say, look, we will not finance this particular thing, and they announce it over all social media and everyone picks it up. And then actually, if you look at the details, it's going to be like the impact will be meaningless. It's going to be very, very small. So I think it sells to public markets, to the retail shareholders, maybe some of the pension funds that are investing in those corporates. If they see an announcement, sure, great, that checks a box and that's it. Truly impactful companies, there's definitely much fewer than what people probably imagine there is once they read some articles.
Arvi, the same question, but as you're talking also to corporates in Baltics and Lithuania, what's happening right now? So what is changing right now in people's minds to want to talk and do more about it?
So yeah, from one point of view, I mean, I just remember, maybe 5 years ago, even when I worked in a bank, it started in Scandinavia, and it was due to kind of upcoming regulations, which I think that, banks saw it coming, and we started to talk with their big customers, big corporates, about this issue, about how that they will not kind of give some loans, they will not kind of invest in these companies, even they will not kind of, they will not do any, not even promote, but de-promote, I would say, this big company. At that moment, I mean, in the beginning, I still remember myself, many corporates in Lithuania, Baltics, were looking like, okay, no, sustainability, it's not for us. I mean, it will come and it will go away soon. But, we're talking as a bank with them, and we saw it coming little by little, and we did even few kind of, I remember, different kind of decisions based on this field. And we saw how margins of loans can differ. And that kind of affected a bit. So, when big corporates started to see that, we can't get such a good kind of loans anymore, they understood that, okay, we need to kind of think about it. And some of them understood that it's not only threat, but also opportunity. So by any means, and especially, in Lithuania, we saw, okay, the market is not taken, so let's do it. And I agree with Thomas that some of the companies, started to think about greenwashing as well. So we think, okay, and we had this kind of really big cases here in Lithuania of companies who did it. So, I mean, together with that one, so, I think it came due to, in the beginning, at least how I see it, came from financial sector. And from their regulations, and now it's even broader, because I mean it will be every sector will be regulated soon, and every company is talking about it. No one knows. It's like with innovation, like with banks happened with PSD2. I remember with open banking, no one knows, but everyone's talking about it. So with this buzz, I mean some activities are happening. And one more thing maybe to add here, it's also this green fund and green kind of line which is coming also from the European Union, and this talks that it will be many initiatives. So from one point of view it will be some fines, from another point of view it will be some kind of money threat into that field. So I guess that companies are looking at that angle, and we are also opening or starting a new acceleration program together with Swedbank next year on sustainability topic as well. So we see also how companies are kind of how companies want to join this topic, I would say, from that point of view, and we see that this greenwashing will not happen anymore, because it was the first wave. Like the first thing comes, usually people are trying many different things, but now we are concentrating to the result. So this is the situation.
I think just to add on, Arvydas, you mentioned some very good last point on that. I think it takes time for people to get smarter in this, to really be able to say, look, these guys, this is a lot of bullshit. These guys are for real, and hence I choose their product or consume their offering. I think that time will come. It will take some time. Now, I think it's much easier to fool the consumers that actually some corporates are doing good. I'm not saying all the corporates are not doing good. Some are doing fantastic initiatives and really are taking, sometimes have to take a hit to their P&L to be able to do this. But in actually probably more of the instances is, sustainability or committing to something doesn't mean that, there's going to be a financial loss associated with it. I think like in the case of BP, British Petroleum, they lost insane amount of market cap, and their customers and shareholders have been asking to really diversify much more to the renewable energy, which given the battery prices, given the electricity prices, solar panel prices going down for the last 5-10 years, suddenly the levelized cost of energy just becomes so much closer to the fossil fuels. In some countries, like in regions like Middle East, it is cheaper than fossil fuels. It's time has come.
Okay, we have 15 minutes, and I wanted to touch on 3 more topics. One, government funding and Baltics. So first one is governments. What are governments doing? And let's focus on governments in the Baltics, the ones that they're probably closer to right now. What are they doing? What can they do more to make sure that at least there is enough innovation and startups in the field? With both 3 of us investing in different stages, but what is the role of the government to make sure that at least this is happening, or that there is an incentive for this to happen?
If I can start, one of the things we really miss, and we can take a good example from another industry, I think it's a sandbox idea. So right now we really have quite a good area in fintech industry, and Lithuanian bank worked a lot for that, FinMin as well. And I remember this in the beginning of the summer when we had the project together with WorldCap, Green Water Hackathon. So we tried to invite kind of governmental institutions as well there, and they accepted. But in the end of the day, when some solutions were offered, they didn't have any solution, any framework how to fit them, because we need to change sometimes even the kind of regulations and so on. So in that case, I would say if we had a sandbox where we can put these ideas, test them in the beginning, just to have proof points, just to see if it is a business case, just to see if we can scale, then of course definitely we can work for changing the regulations and so on. But in the beginning for startups, it's kind of hard, and it's very regulated area.
Yeah, definitely good points. I think there are some initiatives, some folks are trying to do it. There's this Mobility Innovation Center run by a few folks that, is trying to really what Arvydas is saying, or some part of it is to bring the Lithuanian Post, Lithuanian Railways, road administration together to really sort of help, sometimes act as a little sandbox for some of the startups, to really help the corporates understand how they can take that technology and put it through their internal pipes and really get to the decision makers and try something that I know Lithuanian Post done something with the city platforms and stuff like that. I'm not sure if that's going to go anywhere, but at least they tried. So definitely governments play a very important role. I think for us, all of us, definitely funding of the venture capital funds or accelerators that I think are the best allocators of the capital into the technology and innovation at an early stage, for sure. So really being able to open that, and what Arvydas mentioned, there's a lot of funding and a lot of money coming from the Green Deal in Europe, so the politicians opening that, to really allocating it to the right initiatives, right folks who can again allocate that capital into the green infrastructure or innovation or early stage startups is super important. So I think it's sort of I'm always very liberal on that, and I think market will sort of fix itself if government sort of does what's in the interest of the market, and sometimes steps to the side, sometimes takes something very innovative and it maybe pushes the regulation that maybe not all the countries have yet, and definitely there's stuff in clean energy that Lithuania still has to do a lot of work in. But we got a fantastic Ministry of Energy, and they did a lot of great things the last few years.
What did you see in the Baltic startups? How could we define the Baltic startup ecosystem in the sustainability, climate, energy, food? So in the kind of larger view, Thomas, you have a more, let's say, narrow view, but probably more specialized. Albeit you're looking at bigger. How is the Baltic scene from the startup point of view right now? And in a way, evolution of the last 18 months, what have you seen changing in a way, right?
Yeah, I'll start. So I think Baltic ecosystem is interesting. I think we still got Estonia, who's been able to produce a fantastic number of unicorns, TransferWise, Skype, Bolt, and many other great companies with a lot of funding from top investors from all over the world. I think Lithuania has some great successes over the last few years with Vinted, folks at Testonet, and many other companies. I think as you mentioned, fintech has been a great initiative that required a push from Lithuanian Bank and Finance Ministry. So we actually, and I think it was one of the impetus for folks coming here to get the license or set up the operation, is that the regulation, which is as hard in fintech is as hard as is in energy and mobility spaces. And we have some folks like Trafi who, if you look at a bit more detail, they're definitely optimizing the way people move, and they have an opportunity to move them to the more sustainable modes of transport, like bikes or electric scooters, away from gas fueled vehicles. So they definitely have a power to do this, I think. And we invested in a number of companies in Lithuania in solar space or EV charging space, in EV charging infrastructure space. We just made an investment 3 months ago. So there's I think it's hard to top. It will be hard to top fintech and anytime soon, at least in Lithuania. But there's definitely positive signs towards this, and there's been some initiatives like EIT, InnoEnergy, providing money to very early stage startups and accelerators in this space with some very much needed funding, as well as I know you guys running the sustainability track. So again, that really pushes folks to see, oh, hey, actually there is money in this, or there's an opportunity, not money, there's opportunity in this. So maybe I can do something. Maybe I don't need to be another fintech founder, but I can do something else. So it's super important to do that at pre-seed and seed stages, because that's where it's hardest to start anything.
Arvydas?
I see Baltics as a good playground for startups, and actually, especially B2B startups. And I'm super happy. I would say that Cristobal, you with StartupWise guys came here, and Ignitis have a fund, and Thomas helping with Contravi and Swem as well. So actually, and we have a few more kind of players here, us as well, maybe in early stage. So I think that we have lots of kind of power to accelerate with startups, and we still have few big kind of, not few even, I think, several quite a good players, B2B players, bigger corporates, who can kind of adjust startups and can take startup solutions for a test, for a drive, I would say, and help accelerate that. So, it's easier definitely if you're a B2B startup to do it with smaller corporate, or corporate subsidiary. Like if we take Scandinavian banks, Lithuanians are kind of we have all of them have some subsidiaries in Lithuania. If we talk about some bigger corporates, we also have some kind of subsidiaries in Lithuania. So it's easier to start here. And we also already saw some good kind of stories. Right now we are, for example, working also with Žalgiris and trying to match startups. And we have already one good actually story with Latvian startup who is also growing with help of Žalgiris. So I see it's a good playground and possibility for all Baltic countries to ground it actually, to have it even more, because we have lots of ecosystem players already. Yeah, Estonia, we're in front of them, but I guess that all countries can benefit of that, and we have few corporates. So, for me, it's this B2B is kind of playing as one of the main areas there.
Mm-hmm. Good. Just I think we mentioned a lot of lots of startups from the Baltics that can be role models or that can be interesting directions. What is the one thing, Thomas, you would like to see in the next 18 months that is still to happen, that can in a way change the playing field, at least in the region?
One thing to point out is hard. I think we need, what I've been super happy about Vinted's official sort of announcement of becoming a unicorn. Estonians had a bunch of success stories and bunch of folks being made multi-millionaires from TransferWise, Skype, and everyone else. In Lithuania, we didn't have it, I think, up to last year. So I think folks seeing those success stories, and one thing that would be great is we had a good legislation on the options. So people really can get the stock options that early employees, later employees can, get it in a tax incentivized way where they don't need.
Why is not happening? We've been talking, I was actually today even talking in Latvia, recommending to a startup to go to Estonia because it's the only place where is ESOPs, ESPAs, right, at a bit.
Yeah.
So both governments, Latvia and Lithuania, have been talking for years. Why is not happening? Why is so difficult to get this right, which is a huge issue to spread the wealth when there is success, right?
Yeah, it's a huge issue. I can't answer. I think there's some, a lot of politics involved, maybe more important decision in some other people's heads, upcoming elections and so on. So, probably a few factors. I think everyone agrees it makes so much sense. As you said, first of all, you can distribute the wealth to many more people, and it will help to spread the equality of wealth, as well as really incentivize people to do things, take more risks, maybe not go to a comfortable job, but, take a risk when there's two passionate founders doing something. So I think, so one thing is really, if we could get this fixed as soon as possible, that would be great. And I just hope more unicorns pop up here. Maybe some folks like TeslaNet gonna do a fundraising round at some point in the future. I think a lot of more people would become officially very wealthy and would show that, there's, if you put in commitment and passion into something, can really be very successful in the field.
Arvidas?
I would also agree that I would love to see some few more exits, and out of that, I would love to see angel investors, becoming active. Actually, in Lithuania, we have few, but I would say that we still miss the angel investors who are successful founders and have successful exits. So usually, most of our angel investors are still wealthy people, but we never run a startup. We never kind of, had an experience in that one. So that's why we can't, afford the risk. We don't understand it. And that's kind of, going to that way. So one of the success stories in Silicon Valley is that, people are, the successful founders, the successful exits, more and more angel investors are becoming available. So it means that, more and more capital to early stage startups. And, again, and that could be a big machine. So I would love to have it, to see at least 5 kind of, maybe not unicorns, but at least close to unicorns exits in here, and to see how, this angel investment kind of thing can roll up to a bigger thing.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think we need the unicorns. We need exits, right? And I think 100 million exits, 50 million exits are also, I think, some of the unicorns will not exit.
Yeah.
Which just basically is the ESOPs that is providing potentially the wealth, right? But I think there's a lot of exits, M&A opportunities for early cash out of the founders also that will, and I think we're educating the market to give back. I don't have any doubt that actually is going to be different. That the case is just it has still to happen on a more scalable matter, right? But I think with 1,000+ startups and all the money that has been invested by VCs in the past 3-4 years, it's just a matter of time. Yeah. It just takes some more time. And I tend to think that COVID is showing that maybe some of our startups in the Baltics are even more resilient than they was in Western Europe because they can live with less cash. They are even in Baltics probably be less hit from the day to day, which they can be focused still on their businesses. So maybe this is providing an opportunity, right, on that direction. Okay, just wanted to parting words on both Thomas and Arvidas, and maybe we talk about what we want to happen, which is a good way. But any kind of prediction, last words, Thomas? Let Arvidas go first because he's usually building on you, so he can be more original if he wants to before I kind of do our final side. So Arvidas, any parting thoughts about how to get more climate startups at the end of the day? Because if we get more, at some point, all the other elements we will put together with investor mentors, networks. But how to get more and how to get more founders preoccupied about this?
I think that one of the easiest ways to work with is lots of social entrepreneurs from very beginning, and from very beginning talk about profit. So just forget kind of today's kind of perception of this kind of startups, because today lots of people are talking about that it's charity, it's grants, no profits, donation, whatever. So let's forget it. Let's talk about profits from day one, and let's say that profit is not a bad thing. So if you can be sustainable financially, then you can definitely be more sustainable also from other perspectives as well, and you can give much more to the client as well. So that's my kind of vision.
Yep.
Yeah,
Thomas?
I think from parting thoughts from my side, which I really like and I really hope, is that someone said that the first trillionaire entrepreneur will be a green tech entrepreneur, and I think there's a lot of logic to it. Maybe it's going to be Elon Musk, maybe someone new that we don't even know yet. I think there's just so many areas to explore, including battery storage, renewables, software, artificial intelligence, to really help us understand the climate data, the food ecosystem, the way we construct the buildings and everything like that. And, there's challenges like one of the most important ones, how to keep the carbon in the ground. Someone's going to figure it out. And there's a golden opportunity for entrepreneurs to really do it and make money while doing that. So that's what I would like to finish with.
Okay, well, thank you both. I think, again, call it climate startups. It was a difficult kind of grounded, but I think with three of us passionate about sustainability in our different areas, I actually agree with you. I'm looking forward to the first exit in the sustainability space in the region. And I think that will be a huge boost for people. Parting thoughts on my side, we are, as you mentioned, we're having our first sustainability program applications open for a month. And I would almost like to say I want to create a lot of sustainable startups working on sustainability and becoming role models. So Arvidas, Thomas, thanks a lot for your time, for the insights. Looking forward to listen to the rest of the conference. And thank you. And let's keep impacting the region, because I think that's what we're all passionate about. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Thanks everyone for tuning in today. I hope today inspired you to look at a different perspective to the European Green Deal and see how startups can play a role in it. Over the next 4 days, we will explore more how startups can work with governments and what public sector challenges it can solve. Tomorrow specifically, we will have a day titled Rethinking Public Services. We will look at the concept of government as a service. We will explore what governments can learn from fintech startups and the way they service their clients. How can we build our tax system so paying our taxes can feel as effortless as revoluting money to a friend? We'll explore the most innovative cases from around the world, and we'll have a discussion how could governments provide services proactively and how we're trying to build this new perspective in Lithuania's public sector. Look for the link to tomorrow's live stream in your email or GovTech Week Facebook event. So see you tomorrow at 9:30 a.m. GMT+3 time zone, and bye-bye for now.